So one of the things that just absolutely broke me last week was watching the President of the United States berate the South African president in the White House because of the white genocide in South Africa, which, by the way, is completely and utterly fake. It is a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory that they try to use in order to argue that things were better under apartheid in South Africa than they are now, and these black people are out of control, and they're mass murdering white farmers. Meanwhile, the white population in South Africa accounts for 7% of the people there, and they own 70% of the land. Less than 1% of the murders are white farmers. It's a complete and utter joke. And you had the president wholeheartedly 10 toes down arguing that this is what's happening in South Africa to the president of South Africa. And by the way, using literal fake news to try to make his case. Had some articles where he was like going through it like, death, look at this, death, it's happening. Meanwhile, somebody did a fact check. And one of the articles had a picture of like something happening in the Congo. And he used it to say there's a white genocide in South Africa. Just absolutely disgusting. And the thing that really broke me is that here you have all these idiots trying to muck up this fake issue about white genocide in South Africa. At the same time, they are literally carrying out an actual genocide in Gaza right in front of our faces, which is why I said, if there's anybody who tells you there's a genocide, a white genocide going on in South Africa, but there's not a genocide in Gaza, you can very comfortably dismiss literally anything that person has to say on any issue. One of the other people who seemingly is now fed up with the cadre of genocide deniers that are all over social media these days is Mehdi Hasan of Zeteo News. And he goes out there, he does this incredible segment where he explains in no uncertain terms how it's no longer debatable. There's no debate here. There's no real debate here. It's a fake debate to the extent there's any debate. This is a genocide. Watch.
The G word, genocide. Most media outlets in the West, even now, even as Israel continues to proudly flatten Gaza and starve the Palestinians of Gaza, refuse to use the term genocide. Joe Biden last year went out of his way to say what's happening in Gaza is not genocide. Keir Starmer refuses to say it is. And pro-Israel groups often accuse anyone who says Gaza is a genocide of perpetrating an anti-Semitic blood libel.
That's the other dirty trick, bro, that I can't get over. I just can't get over how fake it is, and I can't get over how much it undermines real anti-Semitism. To say that anybody who accuses Israel of doing genocide now is by definition anti-Semitic, it's just a lie. They're lying and they know they're lying. It's that simple. We're going based off the evidence and the facts on the ground and what's actually happening. And nobody said anything about Jews. We're talking about the Zionist ethno-state of Israel. That's a different thing from Jewish people. I know that they try to conflate those things, but they're conflating it for a nefarious reason. So that when you call out the violence of the state of Israel, they go, you're an anti-Semite because you're criticizing all Jews. They're just liars.
And yet here's the thing they don't want you to know. Genocide experts are almost all in agreement that what's happening is a genocide, per the legal definition under the Genocide Convention, acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So here are the names, the expert names you need to know, including Jewish and Israeli experts, on the subject of genocide to avoid being gaslit by apologists for Israel. First, there are the academic experts who say Gaza is a genocide. Martin Shaw, who literally wrote the book What is Genocide? Melanie O'Brien, who is the literal president of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. Dirk Moses, who is the senior editor of the Journal of Genocide Research. Eva Vukušić, who helped prosecute the Srebrenica genocide. William Shabas, who even defended Myanmar against charges of genocide, against the Rohingya, but says what Israel is doing in Gaza now is a genocide. There are also the Israeli genocide experts, the Israeli historians of the Holocaust, who say Gaza is a genocide. Professors Omer Bartov, Amos Goldberg, Daniel Blattman, Raz Siegel, Lee Mordecai, Dr. Shmuel Lederman, who was originally opposed to calling Gaza a genocide, but now says, quote, what Israel is doing in Gaza is genocidal in every sense. Then there are the human rights groups who say Gaza is a genocide. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the legal clinics at top US universities who say it's a genocide, at Boston University School of Law, at Cornell Law School, at Yale Law School. The United Nations organizations and experts who say it's a genocide. The UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry. The UN Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices. Multiple UN special rapporteurs. In fact, speaking the other week to the Dutch newspaper NRC, the Israeli expert Ras Siegel said, "Can I name someone whose work I respect who doesn't consider it genocide?" His answer, no. The Israeli expert Shmuel Lederman says it's now the consensus view among genocide researchers. So apologists for Israel and lazy and cowardly both sides media outlets might want to reject the charge of genocide in Gaza. They might want to pretend it's hyperbole or even anti-Semitic. But the experts, the actual experts on genocide, they know a genocide when they see one. And they see one in Gaza.
So it is journalistic malpractice and a dereliction of duty for people in the media and politicians to not call a spade, be honest, be upfront, be clear, be straightforward. Because if you're not calling it that at this point, you're just lying. It's just a lie. It is the most well-documented genocide in the history of humanity. And you have some people who just bury their head in the sand and pretend like that's not the case. So, by the way, some updates for you here. Israel's propaganda effort is really sputtering out and crashing because they are overreaching to the most insane degree I've ever seen in my life. So, I don't know how many of you have been following this, but there's this children's entertainer, like a toddler's entertainer, named Miss Rachel. And she's kind of like the modern day version of what Mr. Rogers was for like my age group growing up, right? Or the dude Steve from Blue's Clues. And like all she does like little sing-alongs with kids, and it's the most harmless entertainment you've ever seen. She's this like sweet motherly figure to little kids. And the Israeli propagandists have now gone out of their way to smear this poor woman and call her an anti-Semite and pretend like she might be funded by Hamas. Why? Because she, like, cares about the deaths of Palestinian children. I mean, I wish what I was saying was not true, but it is. This is what they're doing. So let's watch a little piece on that.
Let's go back to sleep, Rahaf. We're so tired.
This is Miss Rachel, hanging out with her new friend, Rahaf. Miss Rachel is like YouTube's Mr. Rogers, with millions of subscribers and billions of views.
Can you nod yes?
And Rahaf is a 3-year-old double amputee from Gaza. She lost her legs when her home was bombed, and months later was medically evacuated to the U.S.
Gaza leads the world in child amputees. They have whole warehouses of child prosthetic limbs, which, by the way, Israel just bombed one last week. Why? Because you have Israeli snipers purposely shooting at their legs and their arms, trying to maim them. And you also have bombs, and the rubble falls on them. Many kids die, and others end up needing to have an arm or a leg amputated, or both, or all of their limbs. They lead the world in the same way that Israel leads the world in murdering journalists. We've had over 200 journalists murdered, which is more than the number of journalists murdered in World War II. Just to give you some information on what we're watching here.
Miss Rachel saw a video of the little girl, now living with her mom and a host family in Missouri, watching her show.
She's just so precious. Hopping like a bunny, and she was kind of hopping on the couch.
And arranged to have Rahaf come visit her in New York. Rahaf is part of a new group of fans Miss Rachel discovered last year. Refugees of the war in Gaza.
I was tagged in a video of a toddler and a brother and a sister watching in a tent. And I saw the toddler swaying and the little girl smile, and I was just so touched that I could bring a little bit of joy to them during unimaginable circumstances.
Did you know that you had this audience?
No, I was completely surprised. Someone wrote, "This made me realize that these kids are like mine and like ours." And I know so many parents that enjoy our show feel the same way. They say, as a mom, I just think about, I see my babies. All children are worthy.
She's posted more and more about Gaza as the war has gone on, highlighting the humanitarian crisis and launching a fundraiser for kids. She's gotten supportive comments, but there's also been backlash.
The bullying is so bad. It's so bad. But I can handle this.
So, of course, she's referring to the pro-Israel propagandists, the extreme Zionists, who are pestering her and haranguing her and harassing her for giving a shit about children in Gaza. Because, in the minds of those people, they don't count, those kids. They're just terrorists in waiting. This is how they think of them. And this is why you've had many top Israeli officials, media figures, politicians, all say that, hey, we think the babies are just as guilty as the adults. That's what we think.
You seemed very emotional about the bullying that you said you'd gotten for speaking out.
The idea that caring for one group of children means that you don't care for another group of children is false. And it's so hurtful because I care so deeply for all kids.
In April, an advocacy group called Stop Anti-Semitism called her a mouthpiece for Hamas.
This is what I'm talking about, y'all. This is what happens when you get away with everything forever. Which, of course, Israel has had the diplomatic cover of the United States of America, the most powerful country on earth with the biggest military. And since they've been able to get away with everything, they just keep going further and further and further and further. There's a real, life lesson in there, right? Clear lines have to be drawn. Boundaries have to be drawn. People need to be upheld to standards. And when you get rid of all the standards, they become monsters. And these people are monsters, really? Miss Rachel is a mouthpiece for Hamas? Are you out of your minds?
Group accused you of essentially acting as a foreign agent and asked, for the Attorney General to investigate you for spreading propaganda.
Obviously, that's not true. I care deeply about all children, Israeli, Palestinian, Jewish, Muslim, Christian. I wouldn't be Miss Rachel if I didn't speak up for them and speak up for all of them.
This is a prayer for all the children.
Miss Rachel has also used her platform to express grief over the deaths of Israeli children and said she's met with the family of hostages still in captivity.
It's incredible. It says everything that she met with children on the Israeli side as well, if their parents were held captive and hostage by Hamas. She met with them, she cared for them, and she still gets smeared as being pro-Hamas. Because, guys, it is never, for the Zionists, it is never enough. It's never enough. You need to be all in on that side, and you need to denounce all Palestinians and call them animals, call them scum and vermin. And if you don't do that, you're one of the bad guys. It's very clear to see who's correct in this fight based on the actions of the different sides here.
Here in the U.S., Rahaf was fit for prosthetics and has learned how to walk again. A group called Palestine Children's Relief Fund helped her and her mom get out, but her dad and two brothers are still in Gaza.
ورهف محظوظة كتير طبعا إنه رهف قدرت تطلع بس في أطفال تانيين لسه موجودين بغزة وبتمنى إنه هدول الأطفال إنه يطلعوا يتعالجوا زي رهف. طبعا في أطفال كتير لسه ما زالوا طبعا تحت الركام. أنا بشوف هذا الإشي طبعا لأنه بشوف أولادي كيف مجرد ما يحكوا مع رهف ولا حتى يشوفوها إنه ماسكة خبزة ولا بتاكل بصيروا يسألوا فيها. طبعا هذا الإشي كتير بوجعني.
Anything is possible for Rahaf, and she has healthy food, and she has clean water, and she has wonderful medical care. This girl is thriving. We have to do this for all kids because they all deserve that.
Mina Durson, CNN, New York.
Could you imagine watching this precious, adorable little girl dance and sing with Miss Rachel? Look at how innocent she is and how sweet she is. And you use this to smear Miss Rachel as if she's doing something wrong, as if this makes her a mouthpiece for Hamas, as if she doesn't care about Israeli children because she's dancing with a Palestinian child and she understands the immense suffering going on in Gaza because of Israel's absolute campaign of annihilation and extermination. Loathsome is not a strong enough word. We need to invent a new word to describe what the Zionists are doing in this scenario. We absolutely do, because I've never seen anything like this in my life. Just witnessing a live-streamed Holocaust 24/7, and they still have the nerve and the gall to play the fucking victim? Are you kidding me? Look at this, guys. Ehud Olmert, former Israeli prime minister, declares he has no choice but to describe Gaza as a war of annihilation waged with deliberate, malicious intent to indiscriminately kill civilians. So, and Michael Trace goes on to say, so he'd better not come to the U.S. or he'll probably be deported back to Israel. So here's the actual quote. What we are doing in Gaza is a war of annihilation, indiscriminate, unrestrained, brutal, and criminal killing of civilians. We are doing this not because of an accidental loss of control in a particular area, not because of a disproportionate outbreak of violence by fighters in a particular unit, but as a result of of a policy dictated by the government, knowingly, intentionally, maliciously, with malice aforethought, and with reckless disregard for human life. Yes, we are committing war crimes. Well, I guess Ehud Olmert needs to be investigated because he sounds like a member of Hamas now, doesn't he? The former Israeli prime minister sounds like a member of Hamas, doesn't he? Or he's just being honest and speaking accurately about what's happening. Or that. This should be terrifying to everybody. A new poll of Israeli Jews conducted by Penn State University reveals overwhelming support for ethnic cleansing of Gazans and solid majority support for ethnic cleansing of Israeli Arabs. Nearly half support killing all Gazans in cities captured by the IDF. Look at this, guys. Let this settle in. 47% support the mass killing of all Gazans in cities captured by the IDF. That's nearly half. Say, literally do a Holocaust, right? And then you have 82% support ethnically cleansing all Gazans, which is a fancy schmancy way of saying, hey, kill as many people as you can, and then the rest of them, force them to go to Libya or Jordan or Egypt and get them off the land so we can take it and we can reoccupy it and settle it. That's what this means. 82% support for ethnic cleansing of Gazans. 82%. There is a serious problem in Israel. This is, it's just, they're caught in a manic state of violence. They're caught in a manic state of violence and extermination and tribal thinking. They're all bad, we're all good. What we do by definition is correct. What they do by definition is bad. This is where we're at. This poll is horrifying. It really does remind you of what, the sentiment within Nazi Germany may have been like at the height of their atrocities. All right, I got more for you. So remember when we discussed this recently on the show, but the idea was, and Bezalel Smotrich said so much in a speech he gave, that all right, well, what we got to do to get the international community off our ass is we have to allow in some amount of aid so that it doesn't look like we're doing what we are doing, which is a genocide and an ethnic cleansing. And then he goes on to say, yeah, let's resettle the whole fucking place, right? So barely trying to put a veneer of humanitarianism over this brutal extermination campaign. But it looks like the world is not falling for the head fake. Because what happened? At first, they were like, okay, we're going to allow in some trucks. How many trucks for the 1.8 or 1.9 million people still remaining in Gaza? They say 9. Oh, 9? Thank you. You're so generous. You're so altruistic. It really is incredible. So here we have a piece on this.
Aid is trickling into Gaza for the first time in 11 weeks after Israel eased its blockade of the enclave on Wednesday. Since March 2nd, Israel's government had not let humanitarian aid trucks enter Gaza at all, while Israeli forces have since resumed attacks there, breaking the ceasefire with Hamas. Hundreds of aid trucks with perishable food sat for days waiting to be let in. On Wednesday night, around 90 aid trucks entered Gaza. On Friday, Israel's government said 83 more trucks entered, bringing the total to 190. But the head of the United Nations Refugee Agency said the aid represents a drop in the ocean. The UN has estimated the people of Gaza need 500 aid trucks a day to avert a further humanitarian disaster. And to make matters worse, the UN reported that 15 of its trucks were looted en route to food camps in southern Gaza. Still, some bakeries and kitchens were able to start to bake bread and make soup, but it's not nearly enough. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, which is a non-governmental organization that analyzes food insecurity around the world.
Population of Gaza at risk of high levels of acute food insecurity. 100%.
Nearly 100% of Gaza's population, 2.1 million Palestinians, will experience high levels of acute food insecurity in the next few months. Some of the images we're about to show you are deeply disturbing, but they are the reality inside Gaza. 9,000 children in Gaza have been treated for malnutrition just this year.
9,000? Jesus Christ.
71,000 more could face malnutrition in the next year. And the health minister for the Palestinian Authority said that in the past few days in Gaza, 29 children and elderly people have suffered starvation-related deaths.
I had read 60 or 70 thus far.
Has ratcheted up its military offensive, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now says he wants to take over all of Gaza and seize, quote, full control there. Joining us now from Jerusalem is NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley. Matt, good afternoon to you in Jerusalem. We have heard reports of more Israeli strikes in Gaza overnight.
That's right. Some 70 people or more, I think that number is going to be increasing as we're seeing this offensive continuing all day long, have been killed just in the past 24 hours. And this, according to health authorities in the Gaza Strip, which is ruled by Hamas. Now, as you mentioned, one thing thing that we need to mention here is that a lot of these airstrikes have been hitting hospitals and they've been hitting medical facilities, which are struggling to keep up with both the number of injuries they've been taking in and also with the fact that they've been dealing with this 11-week-long blockade, which, as you mentioned, has just been loosened ever so slightly. But also, in addition to them not letting in food, not letting in fresh water, not letting in much-needed fuel, medicine also wasn't being allowed in, and that meant that a lot of these medical facilities were struggling. I want to bring you up some of these other statistics. And by the way, we heard from officials in Gaza that the number of trucks that have been allowed in now, and we just heard this, is more than 200. So we are seeing more and more coming in. But we also got some statistics from the government media office. They said that so far, ever since this blockade has come into force, in 80 days, they've had 58 deaths from malnutrition, 242 deaths due to food and medicine shortage, 26 kidney patients lost their lives due to nutritional and medical care, and there were more than 300 miscarriages among pregnant women due to a lack of essential nutrients for the continuation of a pregnancy. But
oh, man. So, by the way, there is a method to this as well. In fact, you had the head of, I think it's called the Gaza Humanitarian something agency, something like that, which is basically this front group for the U.S. and Israel, which is pretending like it's all about humanitarianism, but ultimately it's not. It's about carrying out Trump's plan and Netanyahu's plan of ethnic cleansing. And so part of the purpose of now letting in this minuscule amount of aid is they are trying to force the entire population into a smaller area in Gaza. I believe it was southern Gaza. So they want to force them into a tiny area in southern Gaza to basically clear the way for Israel to reoccupy and resettle the remaining portions. So that's at the core of what's going on here. And in fact, the head of that new group, the Gaza Humanitarian Agency or whatever it was called, that guy, who, by the way, is like a mercenary, he resigned. When he saw the real plan and what they wanted him to do, he resigned. When you even shock the conscience of a mercenary, man, that's got to be super extreme. Holy shit.
I also want to show you a little bit about the footage that our teams in the Gaza Strip took of Najwa and her family. This was a heartbreaking story, and you can see, in their basically makeshift home. These are people who, like so many people in the Gaza Strip, have been displaced time and time again. She has many children. Some of them are 6 years old, 5 years old. They look like they're 3 or 4 because of the way in which their bodies have been emaciated from lack of nutrition. And this is a situation that we're seeing in families across the Gaza Strip. And again, our teams in the Gaza Strip are getting this footage for us so we can bring it to you. But you're just seeing these images. This little girl here, I believe she's 5 or 6 years old, and of course she just doesn't look that age.
Clearly MSNBC is Hamas. Clearly this reporter is Hamas. Clearly Ali Velshi is Hamas. Because you're not allowed to give information. You're not allowed to educate people on what's objectively happening in empirical reality, because that means you're Hamas.
And so these are the effects of the blockade that, while we're seeing it loosened, again, it is still very much ongoing because, as we've heard from the United Nations and from officials there, the need is massive and it still is not being met. There are 190,000 pallets of food aid that are waiting to go in. This, according to the head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, enough to fill 9,000 trucks of food that haven't been going in. He said that the need for the more than 2 million people in the Gaza Strip is more along the lines of 500 to 600 trucks a day, far more than we've been seeing going in this week. So again, we're seeing a little bit of a lessening of this blockade, but as far as the United Nations is concerned, as far as the World Food Program is concerned, health officials in Gaza are concerned, much more needs to come in.
Those are disturbing images, but thank you to the team in Gaza and you for bringing them to us, Matt. We'll talk to you later on. Matt Bradley for us in Jerusalem.
So this is all on purpose, y'all. This is all on, but they're doing it all on purpose. They're starving them on purpose. I don't know how anybody can debate anymore what's going on here. I mean, just within the first week or two after October 7th, when top Israeli government officials were saying, we're going to do a total siege and not allow in food, fuel, water, and electricity for the, at the time, over 2 million people there, that is an admission we are doing collective punishment. Collective punishment. So even though there's only 30,000 or maybe 40,000 members of Hamas, we're going to punish over 2 million Palestinians. Call that what it is. Call that what it is. All right, and then finally, at the same time, we just learned there was another massive bombing spree carried out by the IDF war criminals. Listen to this.
Also new this morning, Israel has issued evacuation orders for southern and eastern Gaza with a warning of a, quote, unprecedented attack. It comes after deadly strikes overnight yet again, including on this school where 20 Palestinians were reportedly killed. An Israeli military official telling CNN that Israel now plans to occupy 75% of Gaza.
A school that was functioning as a humanitarian zone, of course. By the way, I think the school was already destroyed because virtually every hospital and every school in Gaza is already destroyed. But they were using the area for civilians to be, and they went and bombed that. By the way, there are some horrific pictures coming out of there, too. There's one of a little girl being engulfed in flames, and you can see the outline of her body. Incredibly, incredibly disturbing. But now they're saying, yeah, we're gonna occupy 75% of Gaza within 2 months. And by the way, what happens after that? Well, you all know they're working on the Trump plan and the Netanyahu plan. Let's send these people to Libya or Jordan or Egypt. Let's force them there, which is ethnic cleansing, so they can build some casinos and hotels on the beach. And golden statues to Donald Trump in occupied Gaza.
Within 2 months. Let's get straight to CNN. Jerusalem Bureau Chief Oren Lieberman. So, Oren, Israel announcing this upcoming unprecedented attack in southern and eastern Gaza. It's very hard to imagine at this point what unprecedented means. And they're also laying out their plans to occupy most of Gaza. What are you hearing?
Alex, the size and scale of the evacuation order we saw earlier today from the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, is simply unprecedented in and of itself. Certainly one of the largest evacuation orders we have seen recently and perhaps since the start of the war, covering not only most of southern Gaza, but also eastern Gaza as well, including the city of Khan Yunis, one of the most densely packed areas in Gaza, where many displaced Palestinians have already gone. Well, there will be a forced displacement again because of this latest evacuation warning, which the IDF says will force Palestinians to the Al-Mawasi area, a narrow strip of land on the beach there. The IDF says this is after there were 3 rockets fired earlier today, 2 of which landed in Gaza, 1 of which was intercepted. We haven't seen those attacks begin, but certainly we'll keep watching this. In terms of the long-term plan, an Israeli military official says the IDF's plan is to occupy 75% of Gaza in 2 months as part of this expanded military operation with 5 full IDF divisions. That's tens of thousands of Israeli soldiers already operating inside of Gaza that will force Palestinians onto a narrowing piece of territory or several pieces of territory inside of Gaza. We have already seen some of those strikes over the last few days, including overnight, where the civil defense in Gaza as well as hospital officials tell us more than 20 Palestinians were killed on a strike on a school. Doctors say it was difficult to identify some of the bodies because of their condition, frankly, after that strike. Israel and the Israel Security Agency, the Shin Bet, say the school itself was a Hamas command and control center. And
oh my, they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. It's all they got. It's all they got. That baby is Hamas. That toddler is Hamas. That hospital is Hamas. That school is Hamas. That UN worker is Hamas, that World Central Kitchen worker is Hamas, that Amnesty International person is Hamas, the Doctors Without Borders doctor is Hamas.
That is why it was struck. That is part of the scale of the operations we are seeing. We expect that to expand as this continues here, Alex.
I remember when I said very early on in the genocide, Israel is going to take Gaza. They're going to resettle it. They're going to reoccupy it. I said that very early on, and I was called a conspiracy theorist. I was called a conspiracy theorist. I was also called a conspiracy theorist when I talked about the long-term plans for a greater Israel. Not only take Gaza and the West Bank, but expand beyond that. We're already seeing those plans in motion. Israel already took massive swaths of Syria. After Assad fell, Israel took massive swaths of Syria. And the new Syrian president, who, by the way, was in Al-Qaeda, is saying, it's okay, Israel can have that. If we can normalize with the U.S., and make some sort of deal with Donald Trump, we'll let Israel take massive swaths of Syria. So greater Israel is happening right in front of our noses, and I would like a lot of apologies. Because I said this early on, and I was called crazy. I was called a conspiracy theorist. I was told I was reading too much into it, and I'm not kind enough to the intentions of the Israelis. It turns out, if anything, I was too kind. I was too soft in my analysis. Because the speed with which they're bringing about the reoccupation of Gaza and the attempt to create a greater Israel is astonishing. It's astonishing. So don't let anybody gaslight you. We know exactly what we're seeing. And at this point, if you are not just on the right side of it, then you're on the wrong side of it. There is no middle ground. There is no both sidesism that's acceptable given the facts of what we're witnessing. You're either with humanity or you're against humanity. Those are the only options. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.